we move to the next one.
Okay, thank you, Mason, and thank you, Ru. Yeah, it's really, really great talk. It's my great pleasure, to congratulate two Korean, young scientists make this session so successful. And I'm so glad to say that they are classmates. Yeah, 10 years ago, 10 more years ago. Yeah, so that's a magic platform, met everyone here. So, yeah, I'm going to introduce the second speaker is Huilin Shao, the presidential young professor in National University of Singapore. Huilin received her bachelor degree from Cornell University with double major in biological science and in physics. She amazing. She completed her durable PhD at Harvard, both in biophysics and MD, medical engineering. So that's a really amazing job. I mean, it's not easy anyone to receive a durable PhD at Harvard. She was working and go to Singapore and get a job there and get on the tenure track and become a star. Her work has been published in many top journals, including Natural Science, and many top journals. She won a lot of high quality awards, and I just announced a few of them: James Mill Pierce Award, A-Star Independent Fellowship, and U.S. Early Career Research Award, and OLIA for Women in Science National Fellowship, and 2019 Singapore Presidential Young Scientist Award, and this year, mine, 2020 Young Scientist Award. So, Huilin, yeah, we're so proud of you. Today, your talk is going to, get nanosensors technology for molecular analysis of circulating biomarkers. We're looking forward. Huilin, stage is yours, word is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. Please allow me to share my screen.
Yeah.
Thank you again for the wonderful introduction, and also very thankful for this invitation to give me this platform to share about our recent research work in the development of nanosensor platforms for molecular analysis of circulating biomarkers. I'm Huilin, and I'm based in Singapore, National University of Singapore, from the Department of Biomedical Engineering, as well as the Institute for Health Innovation and Technology. Thank you for this opportunity. So to start off, let me first introduce the problem about personalized medicine. Personalized medicine is a buzzword because it offers tremendous opportunities for us to transform patient care, to administer treatment in a very personalized and individualized manner. But there are many, many challenges to get to this goal of personalized medicine. So to start, as our knowledge of some of these small molecule drugs increases, and as we know a little bit more about some of their potential targets in a very complicated molecular pathway in these cells, there are still many questions that persist before we can take these drugs directly into clinical trials to treat patients. Some of the questions include what are the entry criteria into these clinical trials. That means how do we actually select who are the patients that we're going to recruit to enter to this clinical trial? And then about treatment response. How do we know that the patients are actually responding to these treatments? And how do we monitor this type of treatment response over time in a real-time manner? And the key question is, which are the biomarkers that can actually help us to stratify this highly heterogeneous patient population so that we can give everyone their personalized medicine based on their molecular background. So these are the challenges in administering personalized medicine. Circulating biomarkers represent a very attractive form of information because they can be obtained from easily accessible bodily fluids such as blood sample, urine, saliva, tear, milk, and so on and so forth. They can offer a very non-invasive approach for us to get a snapshot, and particularly the biological and molecular snapshots of what's happening in our body. And there are many different varieties of these circulating biomarkers, and they can occur in different forms and in different sizes. For example, these include very structural components, such as a large cell. In the case of cancer, we might have heard of the term circulating tumor cells, or CTCs, which are these cancer cells that are actively released by the primary tumor into the blood. Down the scale, we can also have these smaller lipid bubbles known as extracellular vesicles or exosomes, which are these tiny lipid vesicles that typically have a diameter that's ranging about 200 nanometers and can carry a lot of molecular information with them and are secreted by a variety of different cells into the bloodstream. And of course, further down the scale, we have these soluble factors, including free-floating proteins, nucleic acids, as well as metabolites that are not bound or encapsulated and are freely circulating in the bloodstream. As we can see from this summary slide here, there are a variety of these circulating biomarkers, and they have different sizes, they have different concentrations, and of course, they have different properties because they can carry a lot of different types of molecular information and components, including proteins, nucleic acids, and so on and so forth. And because of this, we can actually very smartly use some of these circulating biomarkers for different and various clinical applications to achieve clinical goals. However, the very nature that they are so different and carry such diverse molecular information also presents significant challenges for their detection, and particularly for different types of clinical translation. So a key focus of research in my lab is to develop complementary sensor technologies that can measure these novel circulating biomarkers and reveal new clinical insights from these biomarkers. And to date, we are actually using different types of nanosensor technologies, different flavors of these sensor technologies to achieve this goal of revealing new information about these circulating biomarkers. Primarily, we use two general approach. The first is to build this type of solid-state nanosensors. As Professor Rowe, the previous speaker, has mentioned about using these nano patterning as well as micron patterning on this kind of solid substrate, metallic support, and different kind of fabrication techniques, we can actually use very advanced engineering phenomenon to build new sensor technologies that are miniaturized and able to reveal new information about these novel circulating biomarkers. So that is on the solid-state nanosensor technologies. Another approach that my group is taking is actually learning from nature to see how Mother Nature has actually able to create these type of very diverse functionality in cells by taking molecules that are common in nature, including nucleic acids, as well as proteins, and assembling them into this type of molecular nanomachines, such that they are programmed to form very, very diverse functionalities and to also investigate and evaluate different types of circulating biomarkers. So with these different flavors of nanosensor technologies that are being developed, we then apply these technologies to investigate a variety of these circulating biomarkers, actually across the entire spectrum of these circulating biomarkers, to reveal very novel insights that previously were not discoverable about these circulating biomarkers, and then translating them to achieve very innovative clinical applications regarding oncology as well as neurodegenerative diseases. So for the rest of my presentation today, I will be using some examples of the work that we have achieved in the last year to illustrate the approaches that we are taking with both solid-state nanosensors as well as molecular nanosensors about how do we go about to address very complex biological and medical problems to achieve a transformative patient care angle. So let me first of all start off by introducing a bit about the solid-state nanosensors that we have developed. And I'll be using this technology that we have developed to illustrate how we are using this type of engineering and physical phenomenon approach to investigate different types of circulating biomarkers. The technology that I'm going to talk about is known as APEX. It stands for Amplified Plasmonic Exosome Technology, the APEX technology, which essentially allow us to achieve a highly sensitive and also very accurate blood-based detection test for early detection of Alzheimer's disease. We published this work in Nature Communications. This was featured as an editor's highlight, and we received live coverage with live interviews by BBC as well as CNA. So let's take a look at this technology. First of all, let me discuss about the current challenges associated with the detection of Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease is the most common form of severe dementia, and patients typically show very progressive decline of cognitive as well as physical functionalities. And despite the very painful experience that patients as well as caregivers have to go through because of this debilitating decline, the current detection approaches for Alzheimer's disease are actually really, really limited. The disease is caused by an underlying phenomenon that we have these really, really sticky proteins. They are forming these plaques in the brain. And these plaques and these sticky protein patches actually kill brain cells. And therefore, it causes a very, very severe decline of the ability to think and also perform daily tasks. However, the current detection of this disease relies actually primarily on this type of neuropsychological test. What that means is that the clinicians will actually ask the patients to start drawing this kind of clock faces. As we can see from this type of detection, this is a highly subjective detection, which means that it's going to be dependent on how much experience and knowledge patients actually have in a particular area. And by the time the patients are actually showing this type of decline in functionality, what you will realize is that this is already pretty late and pretty advanced in the disease development progression. So this is a very subjective as well as a late stage detection methodology. Molecular tests do exist to help clinicians to make decisions about Alzheimer's disease, but they are also very, very challenging. One example is this, which is known as the spinal fluid test, in which a physician will inject with a very fat needle into the spinal cord to drain out fluid from the patient and then do molecular testing based on this spinal fluid. As we can see from this image here, this is invasive and it's also very painful. So no patients want to do this. And lastly is this brain imaging procedure, where we actually inject a radioactive probe into the patients and thereby enabling us to achieve this type of brain imaging to image the type of really, really sticky protein patches that are formed in the brain to evaluate the extent of damage that's happening in the brain. But this type of scanning is actually really expensive. In Singapore, a single scan like this would cost up to 3,000 Singapore dollars. And as we can imagine, that this type of test is not affordable at all for a very wide and wide range clinical adoption or for very, very preliminary screening. So because of these limitations in our current clinical evaluation of Alzheimer's disease, this not only delayed the diagnosis, but at the same time impedes any kind of drug development. Because without knowing who is a Alzheimer's patient, it's almost impossible to evaluate whether they are responding to certain trial drugs or not. And because of these challenges, there's actually an intense interest to develop a blood-based approach so that we can safely and also provide a easily accessible and early avenue for detection of Alzheimer's disease. And there are indeed several blood-based technologies that are currently in development, but they also face many, many challenges. And I would like to highlight two of the major important challenges in the development of blood-based technologies for Alzheimer's detection. The first is poor sensitivity. And this is further exacerbated by the fact that these reflective circulating biomarkers in blood occur at a much lower concentration as compared to these biomarkers in the cerebral spinal fluid. So very, very low concentration of these biomarkers actually exist in the blood. The second is that even if I were successful in measuring these blood-based biomarkers, the blood-based measurements actually show a really poor correlation to what we can measure and image on brain changes via imaging. And we reason that this could be because that we are actually using two very, very different methodologies and therefore measuring very different structural formats of these biomarker. For example, in the blood test, what we are actually measuring is the total soluble version of the disease protein A beta 42. What that means is that these proteins are all happily suspended in the blood, and therefore we are measuring the total soluble version of this protein A beta 42. However, in brain imaging, as I discussed in my previous slide, we're actually injecting a radioactive probe which preferentially measures these really, really sticky patches, the insoluble as well as the fibrillar deposits of this A beta 42 in the brain. So we are likely measuring very different structural formats of the same molecule but organized in a different format. So this posed the question whether there are actually subpopulations of these biomarkers that can occur in blood that can better reflect the fibrillar pathology that we're actually experiencing in brain. And we developed the APEX technology to address both of these challenges. So the first thing is that we actually develop a sensor that's much more sensitive and have much better performance. Shown here is the APEX sensor, which is a microarray chip. And the basic sensing mechanism of this sensor is based on transmission, surface plasmon resonance. As Professor Rowe has highlighted, that also based on evanescent wave. So what we have here is actually a microarray chip with 60 neatly arranged sensor. Within every single sensor, the basic sensing elements are actually these nanostructured, millions of these nano holes that we pack densely into this area. Because the sensor is patterned with these millions of nano holes and also embedded in a double-layered photonic structure, it's able to perform really well and very sensitively to be size matched to the distinct clusters of these biomarkers that we are interested to measure. And at the same time, we are also able to make this type of sensor chip in a large-scale wafer production scale. What that means is that this will significantly reduce the cost of a single test. And right now, a single test that's based on APEX would cost less than 1% the cost of a brain imaging. In addition to developing the sensor, we also develop new assay technologies to complement the sensor. Shown here is what we have done for the APEX sensor is that we actually built in a localized optical amplification approach. These optical deposits are formed on the biomarker only if multiple of these molecular targets actually coexist onto this single biomarker. This brings us two immediate advantages. The first is that this further improves the detection sensitivity such that now we are over 10,000-fold better than conventional technologies such as ELISA or Western blotting for protein analysis. The next thing is that since these optical deposits, which are enhancer for the signal, are only formed when multiple of these biomarkers co-localize on the same entity, what that means is this will allow us to perform biomarker subpopulation analysis to basically tease out these subpopulation from a very heterogeneous biomarker, a sea of biomarkers. And the most important thing is the technology with this type of assay platform is now able to work on native clinical samples, meaning plasma samples that are either fresh or thawed from repository, requiring less than 10 microliter of these plasma samples and can be easily accomplished in less than 30 minutes. So with this biomarker development as well as assay development, sensor development as well as assay development, what we moved on is to investigate new biomarker subpopulations. So we used the developed APEX platform to perform biophysical studies with APEX technology. So what we have done here is that we prepare two types of this protein aggregates. A smaller aggregate that we call the naive aggregate of the A beta 42, And another aggregate, which is a bigger population of this A beta 42, as we observe under the TEM of these bigger A beta 42 aggregate, what we found is that these bigger aggregates are prefibrillar. What that means is that they readily assemble into this kind of fiber structure, very representative of the stickiness of the protein patches that are happening in the brain of Alzheimer's patients. And when we use the APEX platform, we incubated these two types of A beta 42 aggregates with different types of exosomes, which are tiny membrane vesicles that are found circulating in blood. What we found was that the bigger A beta aggregates actually preferentially binds to the exosomes. And therefore, we actually determine a population of this A beta 42 aggregates as exosome bound and use this interaction to measure the stickiness of this A beta 42 and also their propensity to form these fibrous structure. So we are using this interaction of A beta 42 with exosome as a surrogate marker to measure the distinct biophysical properties of these A beta 42 aggregates. So with this biomarker that's identified, we next move on to the clinical validation part here. What we have done here is that we actually obtain plasma sample from a whole spectrum of patients, ranging from patients who are in the advanced Alzheimer's disease stage, as well as in the early stage of Alzheimer's disease, and also other control patients who are suffering from dementia but are not afflicted by Alzheimer's disease, as well as healthy control. So using the APEX platform, what we have done is, first of all, we measured everything. Basically, like any other test, we measure the total circulating population of this A beta 42. And we measure the signature of that from the blood and also correlate that to the brain imaging study of the same patients. What we found was that there's indeed a very poor correlation, as we can see here, which is almost like a flat line. This is consistent with all the other published reports. They're showing that blood-based signature are actually showing a very poor correlation to the brain imaging study. In fact, with this flat line, what literally this means is that if you do a blood test, this is as good as throwing a coin, that you have 50% chance of showing a high brain imaging or 50% chance showing a low brain imaging, as good as not doing the test. And because the APEX technology is able to do biomarker subpopulation analysis, we then move on to measure the distinct clusters of A beta 42, notably the exosome bound A beta 42, which we consider as the prefibrillar population, the really sticky nature population. They are very, very sticky, as well as the unbound A beta 42 that are freely circulating in the blood. What we found was the exosome bound population can actually reveal an excellent blood-based correlation to the brain imaging. And in fact, with the R-square of over 90%, this is the best reported correlation that's ever published in literature. And because of this excellent correlation, we can also use this for early disease detection, as well as segregation and stratification of the patient population into the different clusters, either as an advanced patient population or as an early stage patient. And very interestingly, the unbound A beta 42 right here is actually all over the place. It's very, very chaotic. So likely because of these really heterogeneous background, therefore, if we were to measure the total A beta 42 population, it's going to mask all of that valuable signature from the prefibrillar A beta 42, which can give a very good reflection about the changes in the brain of Alzheimer's patients. So that is an example of a solid-state nanosensor that we have developed for Alzheimer's disease. In other cases where we are developing solid-state nanosensors in the group, we're actually using many, many different types of engineering approaches, including magnetics, optics, as well as electronics, and catering with very diverse nanomaterials, such that we can investigate novel signatures about these circulating biomarkers, including glycosylation, the sugar coating on these vesicles, as well as the ability to give multi-parametric measurements about biophysical as well as biomolecular contents of these vesicles simultaneously. So that's about the area that we're working on using engineering and fabrication approaches to make solid-state nanosensors. I will now move on to another area that we are very interested in working on, which is on developing of molecular-based nanosensors, learning from nature using DNA as well as proteins, coupling them together to form super nanostructure machines that can execute activities at a very, very high precision. So the example that I will use here is this technology that we developed known as Envision. Envision stands for Enzyme-Assisted Nanotechnology for Visual Identification of Nucleic Acids. Essentially, we are using nucleic acid components as well as enzymes to form molecular switches for the direct detection of nucleic acids. This slide here shows the summary of the Envision technology, which is able to directly detect viral RNA in 30 minutes entirely at room temperature. So the Envision technology is actually using this approach known as molecular switching, where we form this kind of switch with nucleic acids as well as with enzymes. When we couple them together into a complex, the switch is off because the enzyme is inhibited, it's inactive. Upon the binding of a target, and in this case, it can be an RNA target, the RNA target is going to disassemble the nanocomplex, and upon this disassembly of the structure, it's going to liberate an active enzyme. The active enzyme is now a lot more potent than the RNA target, such that it's now able to go and turn on more cascading enzyme events, and therefore enabling an exponential signal enhancement with the activated switch. Because of these development and improvements in the technology, we are actually able to achieve very rapid and specific molecular switching, and also our ability to develop diverse switches for many, many different targets. And at the same time, the exponential signal enhancement is actually universal, and therefore this can be used for very rapid and sensitive detection with minimal requirements about equipment and also any kind of fabrication or environmental requirements. Let's take a look at the programmability and also the performance of the Envision technology. The Envision technology is actually highly programmable. By changing a variable region of the switch, we are actually able to make multiple different flavors of the switch that can be used for rapid new assay prototyping to investigate a variety of different targets. In fact, if we are to benchmark the Envision technology against the gold standard technology, and in this case, the qPCR, we can see that the Envision technology is a lot more specific than the qPCR technology, and it's also much more sensitive than the qPCR technology, capable of almost single nucleotide detection. In addition, by having these molecular switches, by mixing different flavors of molecular switches in different proportions, we are also able to achieve diverse logic operations to get to the state of electronics, to achieve AND gate, OR gate, NOT gates, and so on and so forth. And we can mix all of these gates together to form a super molecular computer that's able to do many different tests and functionalities in a single test tube. So this is a very interesting area as well. And we further clinically validated the technology using clinical samples. As we see here, the technology is actually clinically accurate when we benchmark it against Roche, which is a commercially available testing device and technology for this kind of nucleic acid detection. At the same time, because the Envision, we can actually readily program it to investigate many different targets simultaneously. This not only improves the inter-subtype differentiation, meaning the ability to tell the different subtypes of the diseases, but also within a single subtype, we can cover a broader range and improve the coverage for detection. therefore enhancing our performance for any kind of this clinical detection. So Envision is a very interesting technology, particularly today because of our experience with COVID-19. This slide here requires no further introduction, primarily because everyone's life is affected by SARS and by SARS-CoV-2, by COVID-19. And I would just like to highlight a few things about this particular virus that actually makes Envision a really promising and technology to address a lot of the challenges associated with the current detection of SARS-CoV-2. As we now know that SARS-CoV-2, which is the causal pathogen of COVID-19, this is actually a highly infectious RNA virus. What that means is that the genetic content of the virus is actually an RNA, which is a single-stranded nucleic acid. And we know that this is causing fatal complications, particularly in a very vulnerable group of patients. Triaging currently can be very difficult since patients actually present very common respiratory symptoms, but early detection and our ability to identify this disease is actually critical to reduce the spread of the disease and also to improve the health outcome of patients. So currently, the detection of COVID-19 or for SARS-CoV-2 relies on this approach known as RT-PCR. I will just briefly walk us through the current gold standard for this detection approach. First of all, the virus is an RNA virus, and so in order to use PCR technology for the detection, the first step of doing the detection is to take out the RNA through a process known as RNA extraction. And in fact, very clean RNA is actually necessary because you don't want it to inhibit any downstream technology. And the next step is actually to take this RNA and convert it into a DNA. A DNA is a different type of molecule from RNA, and the reason that we have to do this type of conversion is because the base technology of PCR only works with DNA, and so we have to do this conversion. After we have done this conversion, we are going to add in these green things, which are the primer sequences, so that we can make multiple copies or daughter copies from this DNA, and eventually we will detect with PCR based on these daughter strands. What we can now tell is that we need to design these green things really, really carefully, because should they actually crosstalk or interfere with one another, then that will cause a false signal. So this is the gold standard technology that we are actually using for a lot of our COVID-19 detection. And immediately we can see from this process is that this is a very extensive processing step that you need RNA extraction, you need cDNA conversion, and at the same time, you need very exquisite primer design. So there's a long processing time of 4 to 6 hours at minimal, and also need for very extensive equipment and very clean environment, and of course, very trained personnel to run this. So in the case of COVID-19, the qPCR or RT-PCR technology is not really an ideal technology for us to actually get to a very rapid testing. The Envision, on the other hand, is able to bypass essentially all of these steps of RT-qPCR. It's able to directly detect from the RNA, in fact, even against a very complex sample, which means that the background does not have to be very clean, can be in a sample lysate. At the same time, because of our versatile switch design, we no longer need to go through the exquisite primer design. And finally, because we have a very exponential signal amplification mechanism that relies on multiple enzymes, we can get to a solution, an answer from the sample within 30 minutes, entirely at room temperature with minimal requirement for equipment. What we have done is, in our recent clinical study, we actually have done the clinical validation for the Envision for COVID-19 detection. What we found was that the technology is able to directly detect the virus from clinical lysates within 30 minutes. It's also able to bypass essentially all steps of the RT-PCR approach that we talked about, including RNA extraction, the reverse transcription, which what that means is converting the RNA to DNA, and also the PCR making multiple copies of these targets because it's able to directly detect from a single copy of these nucleic acid. We performed the correlation against RT-PCR and found that there's a very strong linear correlation. And in fact, the accuracy of picking up the patients is over 95%. So last but not least, the Envision is one of the approaches that we have developed as a form of molecular nanosensor. In addition, we are also developing more complicated version of these molecular machines, including making these type of 3D structures using DNA, and then using these 3D structures for 3D barcoding of cellular analysis, that we are able to achieve very complex measurements of protein markers to understand about the markers' subcellular quantity as well as distribution, meaning how are the protein markers actually distributed in a cell. And this type of distributional analysis actually help us to review very, very informative disease information, such as cancer aggressiveness, which typically we cannot get this type of information from a biopsy sample. But with this type of technology, a more complicated of this type of nano machines, we are actually able to review a lot more interesting information, even from the first point of contact with the patients during a biopsy. We can already know how aggressive the disease is going to be, how likely is the disease going to metastasize, as well as how likely the patients are going to respond to certain treatments. So this is my last slide here. I hope that what I've shared today gives a very good overview of the different interesting projects that we are developing in our lab. For anyone in the audience who's interested to know more about our research, please feel free to visit our website. Our key focus is on developing as well as integrating technologies across these 4 major areas, including circulating biomarkers, developing new assay technologies, using programmable nanomaterials, as well as using these miniaturized devices that are based on very extensive fabrication approaches. And right now, of course, we are recruiting. We are always seeking for excellent and highly motivated PhD students and postdoctoral fellows. So if any of this research sounds really interesting to you, we are very excited to have you with us. And last but not least, thank you to everyone who's attending this conference. Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for your generous attention. I'm happy to take any questions now. Thank you.
Okay, great, Huilin. Very, very nice talk. I enjoy a lot, especially the last part. I see your work already used, in the carbon-19 detections. That's really, really great. So now we go to the question part. The first question, can we let me see. Let me get to the position. Okay. Okay, I'm here. So the first question is Professor Shao. Thanks for your wonderful talk. For the APEX, right? APEX, detection. How about the cost of this test? Does it utilize in any hospital?
Yeah, so this is a very good and interesting question. In fact, this is along the line that we actually want to apply the technology, because neurodegenerative disease is by nature a very, very difficult disease to detect, diagnose, and also monitor. So we think that the APEX actually has a very wonderful application to overcome a lot of these existing challenges. Currently, we are actually able to reduce the cost in comparison to the brain imaging test, which is about 3,000 Singapore dollar per scan. We can get to about 1% the cost of brain imaging. And most importantly, this does not require us to inject a radioactive probe into the patient like in brain imaging. It requires a very small volume of blood from patients, and it's a lot safer. So all of these clinical benefits as well as cost benefits are actually what we're thinking when we want to apply the technology for clinical application. We are actively recruiting patients to expand the clinical trial, and right now we are looking at commercializing the technology.
Okay, that's good. Actually, we're really looking forward to that, because in China, now the aging society is really coming out. yeah, many people getting to the certain age. So yeah, some early kind of detections is very necessary. I think this method will be very popular. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Congratulations. We're looking forward that to get to a commercialized too. Second question is, could you give more details about the magnetic nanoparticle device? Is that
Okay.
implantable? Yeah. So
Yeah.
you have one
So
slide there.
yes, we have developed many different flavors of these magnetic devices. They are based on different types of magnetic principle, including nuclear magnetic resonance, NMR, as well as GMR, giant magnetoresistance sensors. Typically, for these type of sensors, we're actually using the nanoparticle as a probe that can help to enhance any kind of biological signature. The advantage of using this type of magnetic modality for detection is that our body actually by nature has very low magnetic susceptibility. What that means is that to a piece of magnet, we are equivalently transparent, right? Unlike any kind of optical or fluorescence detection, where we are actually generating a lot of background signal. The magnetic detection approach, what that means is that when we have a sample, we don't need to do too much processing. In its native state, if we can label very precisely with these self-organized magnetic nanoparticles, then we will be able to get a lot of these molecular information without processing the sample and without subjecting the sample to too much of this manipulation. Our current devices are actually all looking at circulating biomarkers. What that means is that we are actually getting these biomarkers from easily accessible bodily fluids. So they are not meant to be implantable, but we are slowly moving towards an area where we are actually going to interface with human, such that even with minimal invasiveness, we can actually monitor processes in our body in a very, very reflective manner.
Okay, that's very good because a lot of kind of medical detections we use magnetic. So yeah,
Right.
you give the very great reasons because in ourselves, our body don't have a lot of noise. Yeah, yeah. So this was peer, signals. Yeah, we can get it more. So yeah, that's very good. The next question is for detection of COVID-19 by the Envision method is great. Can it be high throughput? Can it be easily operated by the normal people or also need to go professional agency?
That's a very interesting question. So when we develop the Envision technology, what we want to overcome is some of the challenges associated with PCR technology. We know that PCR is a great technology. It's a Nobel Prize winning technology. Yeah. It's a very established technology, which is the reason that when COVID-19 first struck, right, that is the first technology that scientists will all move to because it's a proven and established technology. But there's many challenges associated with PCR technology. In fact, the pressure from such a massive pandemic by COVID-19 actually exposed all of these challenges and shortcomings, right? Including that we need to go through all of these sample processing, sample extraction. Who could imagine that one day we could be short of these reagents for even doing RNA extraction? But the pandemic actually exposed all of these challenges. And for detection by Envision, this is designed to basically bypass all of the steps of PCR technology. We have developed many different versions of the Envision technology. Some are designed in a way that we want it to be point of care. In point of care setting, you probably do not care so much about high throughput. In fact, what you want is when a patient steps into the office, he can get the test immediately, rather than saying that in a hospital setting, I have to wait for 96 patients to come in such that I can fill up one plate and then do the test at one go. So for point of care detection, you actually want something that's lower throughput and you want it to be really done in a very quick manner. But there are also Envision tests we can do that's complementing this type of point of care testing in a plate format such that you can still go through a high throughput. What that means is that when we develop the technology with these two approaches, one is in a doctor's office, another one that's higher throughput, you would imagine that they should be operated by different people. In a point of care setting, you probably want a nurse or someone who's who's trained but not so trained to actually administer and read out the test. But in a very, very high throughput setting, this is meant to complement the hospital's effort in going forward with this type of testing. So if we want it to be operated by normal people, we can actually make the technology in a very, very versatile manner, primarily in the doctor's office. And this is the version that I think will be more appropriate for this type of detection, if what we want to do is actually more for a point of care testing.
Okay, very good answer. Yeah, because now the COVID-19, the detection already become a big business. Yeah, so almost everywhere, everyone need to get these detections, and very frequently. Because like me, sometime I go out of the town, yeah, for a travel, then I come back, I need to do the detection. Yeah, one more time, Yeah, so if it can be operated by yourself, that really makes sense. But if I couldn't operate by myself, if go somewhere like a standard there, I can go there, give some samples. That'll be quite easy, yeah. And I think this will last a little bit longer time than we imagine. Yeah, because now you see the whole world, a lot of people was get affected, and many, many people need to do the detection. Yeah, really looking forward your technology, can be help all these people. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, very good, Huilin. Yeah, now, yeah, I deliver this, certification to you, the electrical versions. Yeah, as I can ask every time we have a super speakers, we deliver this, certification for the ICANX talks, Connect the World and the Universe by your wonderful talk. Huilin, that's for you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Now, yeah, I think it's right on time. We go to the panel discussions, the dialogue for our young scientists. Yeah, I see everyone there. Okay, good. Get my chair. Oh, let me see. Where is me? Okay, here. Okay, yeah. Hi, everyone. Yeah, just now, Huilin answered the question, did a wonderful talk, and Dr. Liu also did a very wonderful talk. Yeah, we see many, many new things. I think Huilin already mentioned that, and the PCR technology, not only win the Nobel Prize, because this week was Nobel Prize week, right? Everyone was talking about that. And all this technology already, help the people and got into our normal life. That's really helpful. Today, I see all of you, in the early stage already did, developed so many new technologies, and they're going to help a lot of people. Yeah, like, Ru, your technique, the super lens, the hyper lens, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. What do you think in the future will be, the best way to help the people? Yeah, in their normal life? Did you have any ideas?
Yeah, so this a very hard question, but it's important, Before we didn't think about this pandemic issue, so every small detail we didn't recognize importantly is become important. So I don't know, my science can contribute this pandemic issue, but I hope, yeah, my vision, my hope is like our lens become small enough we can integrate with our cell phone. So like even we don't need the PCR, so we can see virus and this bad thing immediately using your cell phone. So yeah, I hope, but no immediate product I can show you now, but it could be, but not just by myself and many other colleagues, and collaboration and interdisciplinary work is important, biology and medical engineering device and electrical engineering and so on. So I hope so.
Yeah, so your $5, yeah, the super lens, I think will be, you eventually use like a filters, right? We're adding one filter somewhere. Yeah, that's very, very interesting. Xianting, yeah, your turn, yeah, to say something about your technology contributed to the society.
Yeah, so I haven't got time to talk yet. So maybe after 20 minutes, I'm going to introduce some of our recent work. So we more, work on single cell based protein detection. So I think our angle has something very similar with Huilin. We all try to target on clinical, trees amount of clinical samples and see whether we can, accurately diagnose and provide some useful information for therapeutics for the clinical side. So, this kind of, interdisciplinary collaborations between the engineering domain and the clinical domain, I think it's very critical, especially in the next, 20, 30 decades. Really, the major boundary, I think, become more and more blurred these days. So, yeah, I really expect more and more engineering people jump into this kind of interdisciplinary research field.
Yes, we are all in the engineering. Yeah. You mentioned me one very important words in previous talk. Huilin's colleague, Professor C.T. Lim, has a very famous word on this stage. He says that why we need, engineers came into the field, not the doctor, just the doctors. Because one doctor says that I'm a doctor. Use my, knife for my surgery can only save one people, but together with the engineer, the engineer, I can save 1,000 people, millions of people, because they develop this as tools. Yeah, I remember this very clearly. I think that's our, best contributions we can do, together with all these people in different fields. Yeah, eventually to solve the problems. Yeah. Okay, that's very cool. Yeah, so Miso, great to have you again. Okay, yeah, very nice. And Miso, now I think we came to the next part. Yeah, your favorite question?
Yeah, my favorite question always. So besides science and technology, we always have this question for these amazing stars from in the science community. So my question, and from all those people out there are curious about this. So what is your secret to become really a superstar? So how did you train yourself to be a superstar? So how did you choose your research topic, and what motivated you, and all those things? First.
Okay, Huilin, go first. Lady.
Okay, sure. When I was an undergraduate student, right? When I was selecting my major, I always wanted to do something that's between discipline. I did my bachelor's degree in biology and in physics, and I had an interest in both of these areas. But in one of the undergraduate research discussion that I attended, somehow one of the professor actually mentioned that it's possible to model biological membrane as a circuit, as an electronic circuit, right? Using capacitors, resistors to arrange them. So in my young mind at that time, I think I never thought that they can be seen together in that way, and that kind of eureka moment is like what inspired you to discover a new field, right? I would say that we should know ourselves about what our interest, and then try to marry that interest with things that we are very keen to work in. I think in that way, we will actually really invest ourselves and move towards something that we will never get bored about. I think this is how I select topic. Another thing about having these opportunities, I think it's important. So behind every young and successful scientist, I think there are established scientists or mentors who actually believe in a person. So I think that is also very important. And I'm very grateful for the training that I've received, the exposure that I've received. And now as a professor myself, what I hope is that I will be able to pass on this type of mentoring to future generations, such that they can also see the wonder in this kind of interdisciplinary topics.
Okay, very great. Yeah, Huilin has a very unusual path because no one do durable PhD, right? In Harvard, that's how tough it is.
I'm
Okay.
by my mentors. Yeah, I'm grateful for that encouragement.
That's interesting.
Amazing.
Okay, yeah. So Shanting, yeah.
Right. I think I basically just want to follow Huilin's comment. I have a very similar feeling. I think first of all, interest is very, very important. I'm also very glad that I received very good training from my own mentor. I graduated from Professor Qiming Ho's lab at UCLA. Qiming is a very famous scientist in fluidic dynamics, but also he's very, very nice mentor, on the other side. So most of the people see him as the scientist, but I see him more as a real mentor, because when I decided whether I should go to the industry or whether I should go to the university as a faculty, I had a very long conversation with him. So he said that the most beautiful thing of being a professor is that you can work all the way to whatever you want. Do not worry about retirement. So, and you can do whatever interests yourself. So I think that's the key sentence that make my final decision to become a professor now. So that's the first thing. Also follow your own interest, whatever you want to do, whether you like to do industry or you want to do a faculty, just follow your heart. I think that's a fundamental thing. So the second thing is that the collaboration is very, very important. It is almost impossible to read so many papers nowadays. Every day publish many, many good papers. So if you can focus on your own little tiny area, that's already very, very important. I don't think, at least for myself, I don't think I can read more than the papers in my own field. So collaboration is very, very important. Find the good collaborators in clinical side. Find good collaborators that are good in their own domain, so they know what they are doing. So say if I want to do optics, I definitely do not want to read any paper in optics. I just go ahead and talk to Ro, right? I said, hey, come on, like let's collaborate, right? So if I want to fabricate some like those nanosensors for Apex, I definitely do not want to do it by myself. I definitely go to Huilin. So always look for good collaborators out there. So I think that's the comment I want to give.
Okay, very great. I have to follow you to say some words about Dr. Ho. Yeah, actually, Qiming Ho is not only your supervisor, your mentor, is also my supervisor, my mentor. Yeah, if I'm not his student, but I met him about 20 years ago. Yeah, during his presentation, a plenary presentation, then I got to know Dr. Ho. But later, once I met some problem, the first one I want to consulted with is Professor Ho. So I have some difficulties, some problems. I always go to ask Dr. Ho, what's your opinion, your suggestion, your comments on this? Yeah, it's a super mentor. I think Huilin already says that, we got training, we got help from all these mentors. We need to contribute again to the society, to the young generation. That's kind of like we holding the touch one by one, yeah, generations. But here, yeah, Junson, you are demo. You know why? Because you are Meso's then. Mentor.
Okay.
Right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So
I heard that story is you and Miso are in the same middle school or even high school, right?
Yeah, high school.
We went to the same high school, but not in the same classroom physically, because he's 1 year older.
He's a superstar, right?
1 year older, yeah, 1 year senior.
Yeah.
I'm following his steps. So I went to the same high school and I went to the same university, and
wow.
I'm kind of following him. So.
Oh, that's good.
He makes a good role model, and he makes a great scientific achievement. Maybe I can follow that too. So. Yeah, he can feel the responsibility for me.
No,
yeah, Dr. Lu, that's a big job, Yeah.
Okay.
I like this story, but I want to ask you these questions. Miso told me that your high school, both of you in a very special high school, international one, right? So that's supposed,
high school,
yeah.
so it's not for the students who want to study the science or technology at all.
That's like rich families all getting the
Not at
people.
all. No, not that.
Okay, I guess. Okay, like the people who go to business, go to, banks or something. But
Well,
Junso, why you choose this? Go to science.
Wow, indeed,
so
this question is, many my colleague and Korean people ask this. You went to this, foreign language school, and why do you do science? But realize in my middle school, I feel I'm very confident in science and math. So I was good. So I thought what I don't have is like this language. Like I was bad in English and whatever. So I believe this international high school give me some can feel those stuff more human thing and language. So indeed I was bad in even in high school. My English was not good, but I learned English, French and Chinese. So those
Oh,
Chinese I'm still using. My all this PhD classmates is all most of them is Chinese. My advice is Chinese also. So I get tremendous benefit. I can talk to them with Chinese.
你好，
你好，
欢
你好，
迎你来中国。
一点点，
Okay. Yeah. That's great to know that. So, Miso, yeah, you are beauty, smart and rich family. Why you go to the science? All this hard job, all this tough job.
I have to blame my dad first. So he's a mature scientist. So I guess although my mom tried to make me to like be a pianist or other foreign language related jobs something, and I guess and intrinsically inside my body, I guess I inherited my dad's DNA. So I couldn't help it.
Okay, yeah.
After I went to the high school, I couldn't help it, so I decided to switch to the field to the science and technology. But I love learning languages, foreign languages at the same time, so it was a good match for me.
Okay, very nice. You are really good at all these kind of communications. I fell in love with you at the first sight. What's last year? Yeah, really. Yeah, Miso was an amazing person. Yeah. So, Miso, I have one more question for you and Huilin. Is because I'm old generation. I was mainly in mainland China. Mainland China already say that women as a half of the sky, right? The half. Yeah, so we are really kind of to take all these responsibilities, this work, the hard working. But I think, in Korea or even in US somewhere, most of the lady will not choose a major as science or technologies. Most go to other fields. And when you grow in this kind of environment, did you feel some difficulties and how you overcome all this? Yeah. So who goes first?
I guess Huilin first.
Okay, Huilin, please.
Sure. I think if I look at disciplines, that means the topics that people are studying, I would say that perhaps in biological sciences, if we look at undergraduate population, we see that there's quite a good percentage of lady students. But in engineering discipline and perhaps in physics classes, it's a very, very low number. But they are all scientific disciplines. So I'm not trying to say that different genders prefer different topics. But in general, when we see that ladies progress in their career from junior scientists to perhaps more senior scientists, you will slowly see that there's a decline in that percentage. That could be because of family reasons, personal reasons, and different things. But I think it's also reflective of the supportive structure that a lot of these areas actually are in our society, the kind of support that we have as a lady scientist actually progress in the career. So I think what we have seen in this week with the Nobel Prize, right,
Yeah.
is a huge boost to that confidence to young ladies who are aspiring to be good scientists, that we are slowly transforming. And because of the pioneering work that these women scientists have done, I think they are showing the world that despite the perhaps challenges and also support structure not being there in the earlier days, right? They can still make a huge progress forward. Then, let alone for us, where we are having a much stronger support structure now because of the work that they have done. So I think it's a very empowering information forward to all women scientists as well as aspiring scientists that there's a very good future ahead.
Yeah, it's getting better and better. I mean, this year for the Nobel Prize is really a big kind of progress, right? Yeah, we see many, several, at least 3 or 4 ladies, pop up. That's very great. So, yeah, Miso.
Yeah. So I'm in a bit of a different situation. So in biology, in chemistry, I guess the percentage between the female scientists and male scientists are getting balanced a little bit more and more. But I'm still in material science and mechanical engineering in between. So for example, I'm the only female scientist so far in the building.
Wow. In the building.
Yeah, in the whole building. So I was the first one. So when I joined the group like 9 years ago, the restroom was not really set. So so still something is going on, and the situation is getting better and better. So I cannot complain. And there's, I guess, no limitation that I'm when I work on my research topics because I'm a female. But the problem is in the younger generation. For the younger generation, they don't have as many opportunities as yet to see female scientists in person, not in the TV, on TV, or like on the newspaper, like the rising, I mean, like a big stars who got Nobel Prize. Not like when they see me in person, the students see me in person, they really like the idea that women can be a scientist. And who is really just a normal person like them. So, and that's very encouraging to them. So I feel very responsible to show up in front of really a public, not only in front of the scientific community. So even when I'm busy, I try to be in public to give a talk so that they can feel familiarized with us, and then they can have an idea to become a scientist. They are afraid sometimes, so they don't have options, so they cannot see us in everyday life, and that's the problem. But for me personally, I have more chances to have a project or to get seen on TV or anywhere. So because I'm a female, because they want female scientists, because it's rare still. So I guess I can get more opportunities sometimes, and that's a blessing. But I feel more responsible too. So that's why we got selected last year, Alice and me, and all together, because we were female scientists. So we gave a talk all together as plenary speakers last year, right?
Yes.
So that was a very honorable chances for me, but I have to feel more responsible to raise more female scientists in the future.
Okay, that's a very great point. I think Miso, Huilin got to the very great point. Yeah, now the female scientists actually is getting better and better, more and more, but still less chance, exposures to the public and, to become some figures, because all these young generation, young students, they need some real model. Right? They need to see someone. I don't want to complain this. I know Xianting know that. Yeah, Lu, maybe also know that. In many people, especially in Asia, normally they put the female scientist PhD as like someone strange. right? I don't want to say that worse, but yeah, they see someone strange, like monsters, like dinosaurs or something. Yeah. So yeah, they really, yeah, don't think this was a normal person. Yeah, but once they met, face to face, they see, okay, what a lovely girl, right? Yeah, first sight of me, so I really have that. Okay, what a lovely, beauty girl. And she also did so wonderful work. Yeah, that's the best thing. I mean, that's cool. So I gave the job to, Shanting and Johnson, hire more female students. Yeah, to have more female students and try to help them to grow up, right? That's your job.
Indeed, in our lab, actually, female students occupies, I think, at least 70%.
Really?
So, right. I mean, it's actually in biomedical engineering in our school, it's totally opposite. We are so eager to see more male applicant rather than
okay. I mean, that's maybe in Shanghai, How about you? Yeah, Joseph.
Yeah, so in my lab, like
one female,
four female students out of 30, still so about 10%. So it's very, very low. But in the department, is our lab has most number of female students. So I'm proud of this. They do very good. They do very well.
Okay, that's super. Yeah, I think on this stage we see that females, young stars, and even the young guys was all grow up very well and all done wonderful job. At the early stage, actually everyone has a, equal kind of opportunities. Yeah, they need to, get more exposures to get on the stage. I think many of the young generation will follow you guys. Yeah, to be stars and to be superstars. Next Nobel laureates will be one of you. I hope in the next 50 years I can see that. I will almost 100 years old that time. Okay, yeah, I have my dream here and my best words to all of you. Thank you all of you. It's time. Yeah, we need to go to Shanting's talk. Okay, thank you. Yeah. So yeah.